Hi, welcome to Cinema Then, Cinema Now, the film series with lively discussion. I'm your host, Jerry Carlson, and I teach cinema studies at the College of Staten Island of the City University of New York. Today we continue our survey of the new Latin American cinema. We'll be seeing our second Argentine film. This one hails, in fact, from the 1980s and is titled Poor Butterfly, or Pobre Mariposa. It's directed by Raúl de la Torre and is a special film because it interrogates a very touchy topic, and that is the moment of 1945 in Latin America, a time in which, as we all know, a number of Nazis sought refuge in that land. This film also deals with the ways in which the Jewish community of Argentina tried to come to terms with that. We'll be talking about those issues and others after the film with today's two guests. We have Rolando Epstein, a producer, and Liliana Iribarne, the cultural attaché of the Argentine Consulate in New York City. Enjoy Pobre Mariposa. Before his hand goes down. Hi, welcome back to Cinema Then, Cinema Now. I hope you enjoyed Pobre Mariposa, quite a moving and quite an interesting film. We have, as we always do on the show, the opportunity to talk about it for a bit, a number of the issues at stake in the film. But before we get down to the discussion, I'd like to take this moment to introduce to you today's two guests. Sitting to my left is Rolando Epstein. Rolando is a producer of film. He was, in fact, the associate producer on one of the Argentine films I think many Americans have seen, and that's The Official Story, which won the Academy Award for Best Foreign Film in 1986. He's involved with a number of projects, Argentine and co-productions. In 1989, he was in fact the producer of the new film made by Carlos Saura called Every Smile, New Jersey, starring Daniel Day-Lewis and shot in Argentina. In addition to that, Rolando has an interest in making people understand how lively the film industry is in his native country, and again in 1980, in the spring of 1989, was a co-curator of the Argentine Cinema Retrospective at the Museum of Modern Art. Sitting to my right is Liliana Iribarne, who also has something to do with that because she is the cultural attaché at the Argentine Consulate in New York City, who were some of the co-sponsors of the Argentine film retrospective. Liliana is the head of the cultural department at the consulate, and that includes a set of duties promoting an understanding of the arts between Argentina and the United States, even more specifically running a number of programs on the intercultural exchange between Argentina and the New York area itself. Liliana, let's begin with sort of general question or general topic about the film. This film has, I think, as everybody knows, a very specific moment in which it takes place. 1945 in Argentina. What do you think? What do you think about? What is there about that moment that an American audience might not understand that could be explained just briefly?
Well, I could say it was a very complicated situation. It was 2 years had gone by after the coup d'état that started this period against government, the President Castillo. So this was a period in Argentina where you had like two levels. One was the official level, and what the other level, what was really going on underground in the Argentinian society. So this explains very much like these two levels of reality and an underground reality that are presently in the protagonist's life and in the social cultural life of the
And which, of course, one of the things we see in the film is the way in which the official culture is maintained by the radio show.
Exactly.
Which
Exactly.
begins and closes.
Begins and closes the film.
Right,
Yes.
and we'll all have I hope all of you have a happy tomorrow.
Exactly.
As the last thing. So this is this moment of this tension between what's being said officially and what everybody knows is a turbulence that's going on politically underneath. Now the film begins with the fall of Berlin, and then it ends in October of 1945. What's that? I mean, you know, in every film there's this way in which there are reference made, and if we don't know what the reference is to, I mean, it's like it'd be like watching a Western and not knowing what it means with somebody who has feathers, who appears on the horizon. What was October 1945?
October 1945 was the people of Argentina were asking for the appearance and release of General Perón, who and it was like, in a way, this movement was a result of all the different currents that were happening in the political atmosphere. So it was almost like, you know, it had the need of the people to see their leader had to be answered at that time, even though Perón is a very discussed figure in the history of Argentina, as we all know. You know, that was what really was happening, was that the people wanted the release of Perón.
And of course, that's marked in the film by these statements between the two, I mean, servants, whatever they are, at the radio station, who just remark in the background, well, I guess they'll have to get Perón now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That is briefly showed in the film by, you know, just one or two remarks.
Which would probably be strong, but that's something that an Argentine audience would immediately pick up on as knowing that that particular moment. Well, that's very interesting. I want to switch now from the moment it represented over to Rolando and about the moment in which the film was being made. This is a film that explores the past, but it's also a film being made at a particular moment, and that's the mid-'80s in Argentina. Our audience has had an opportunity, I hope some of them, to have seen another moment from Argentine film history, and that was Hour of the Furnaces, a very important film for all Latin American history. What's the Argentine cinema about in the mid-'80s? Why does this film happen now?
Well,
and why couldn't it have happened at other times?
Yeah, there's two reasons, I guess, to your two possibilities. One is that you need some time to explore the past of your country, necessarily. The second was our political reality. There was a very strong censorship during the 70s and till 83, to be precise. And the Argentine cinema almost disappeared during that period. So you could only revise that period of time after 83 for these two reasons, because you need time to elaborate and because you couldn't do it before because of the political situation.
Right, but we haven't seen as much as we should, I think, but the Argentine cinema in the 80s has made a considerable mark on the world scene.
Absolutely. Since 1983, which is a very important year for Argentina in general, for Argentine cinema in particular, I think that Argentina won like 240 international awards. It's not that international awards mean too much, but when there are so many, they must mean something. The Official Story alone got like 25. This movie won several awards too, internationally. I mean.
Right.
And there's a new breed of directors, young directors, beginning in this era. And some of the old that survived this gap of like 15 years that are beginning to shoot interesting movies again, like Hector Olivera, who survived all this period doing movies that wouldn't bother the system. And now he made this very important movie called The Night of the Pencils, which is also a strong, takes a strong stand against the military government in the past.
Now, I'm always curious about how filmmakers get started in any society, because we have the examples of a country, say like Hungary, where there's a national film school which is incredibly competitive to get into. The United States, yes, we have film schools, but there's not an official way you become a filmmaker here. I mean, you can have as much training or degree, and if you're 45 years old and have a mediocre sample reel, and somebody's 18 years old and has a great sample reel and dropped out of high school, they're the better filmmaker. I mean, I'm not saying the system's good or bad. How is it that these young filmmakers are getting their chances?
The answer is very simple. All of them come from advertising. Because of this gap, most of the creative people in the movies were doing advertising. And all the directors I know from 40 years old down came from advertising.
Oh, okay.
That's their school.
So essentially, for a period, whether it be the 5 or 10 years they worked in advertising, all of these, the immense sophistication of the advertising industry allowed them to sort of perfect their their craft.
Yeah, and to survive on the other hand, and to stay within their medium, and when the time came to be able to produce films.
Well, you know, that does explain something.
I hope it does.
No. The thing it explains is there's a way in which, when films like The Official Story are shown here, or Miss Mary, something of that sort, I think there was a sense in some viewers of these films are so beautifully crafted, and they're crafted in some ways in a very traditional, and I mean that as in an honorific way, filmmaking. So this sort of explains where this great technical concern would come from. Now that's, I think, different from something like Solanas.
Yeah, well, Solanas also had this big gap in which he couldn't produce anything because he's a very political filmmaker. And after doing The Hour of the Furnaces and another film which title I don't remember, I think he had a number of years without shooting. And now he made these 2 films in the last years, Exile of Gardel and Sur.
Right. And of course, but he had also lived, like many artists and intellectuals, he had lived outside of Argentina
he lived in France for a long time.
Yeah.
Many intellectuals in Argentina had to leave the country, and most of them went back after 1983.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Is that also well, let me ask you, as someone who deals not by any means exclusively with film, but with a general set of cultural affairs, about the possible interaction. I mean, is it true in Argentina, as it is in other countries, that life is not perhaps as specialized there as it is in the United States? You know, there's not as much interaction in the United States as one would sometimes wish or suspect between writers and directors and that sort of thing. Is there how to put it, a slightly more interaction among the artists and intellectuals than you find here?
Yes, I would say that there's a great interaction in general among artists and intellectuals, but I would say that this happens basically when there's liberty, because of course, if there's no political liberty, this is the opposite. The intellectuals leave and the artists are confined to do superficial work.
Right.
Because they have to live and they have to go by the rules.
Right.
So I would say that this creative possibility that we do have in Argentina and that comes about because of this interaction is only possible within democracy.
Okay, well that makes no. I mean, it comes back to, you know, those old sad but sort of jokes. Where's the best place to meet an Argentine intellectual? And that's in a Paris cafe.
Yes, that's very sad.
Yeah, it's a very sad sort of thing, and it's a great moment in which you can your people can return on along those lines. Now. Is there, in your view, a lot of this kind of film that we're just not seeing here that's being produced in the industry itself today?
You mean by this type of film, political films that aren't shown?
I'm just thinking of films. Let me just be as vague as possible. But films of high quality, films of distinction. Like obviously, The Official Story is a film recognized of distinction. It has the Academy Award. But the film we've seen today, this is its American television premiere, and an accessible film, an important and interesting film, but a film that we don't have that many opportunities to see, or at least we're happy to have the opportunity to show here.
Yes, this happens because obviously our films are not distributed in the U.S., or we don't have a market here for our films yet. We do obviously are trying to start this, but it's difficult because of there's not an audience that has been developed yet,
right.
And that's the idea of starting this film festival at the Museum of Modern Art, which Rolando Epstein has put together with the museum, and so the idea is to be able to promote our cinema here, and eventually distribute it and get a broader audience for it.
Right. Well, and of course, I mean, one of the advantages that of course, some films are now being made in English because that's a world market demand, but the other advantage is that you are a Spanish-speaking country, and since many people in the United States do speak and understand Spanish, it is not it's not the problem, shall we say, that the Czechoslovakians have of having a language limited to 2 million people or something.
But we do have a problem there anyway, because there's the Spanish, I would say the Hispanic community here, even though there is an interest, is not used to this type of film. So probably, this is also a market to be gained in a way. It's not the typical film that you would think that would interest the Hispanic market in the U.S.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's.
And so there's always the issue of audience development, whether it be among those people who are already interested in international cinema, or should be, or even a specific Spanish language.
Spanish language.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's interesting. Rolando, one of the things that has interested me about this film is its relationship with the official story, because I think it's a film that a lot of people have seen. I think it's got a couple of relations, but one of them is very specific, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, basically, there's two, I think, that are very specific. The main one is that it's the same screenwriter, Aída Bortnik, which is, I think, one of the most important screenwriters in Argentina. And the second one is that the main character is a woman, which is something that is not that common either lately. And in both cases, it's a middle-aged woman looking for her identity, and with something happening that accelerates this process in order to know who she is. And this is something that De La Torre is very interested in also. This is his 7th or 8th movie, and he's very interested in the women's life. And
is he used the same act? Is it
true? Yeah. He has this sort of team in art and in life, on and off, with Graciela Borges. They did, like, from his 7 films, I think 4 or 5 were done with this team, Graciela Borges and De La Torre.
Now, is he the example of someone who has made 7 films? They haven't all been in the 80s, have?
No, but his most important films had been in the 80s, I would say. And the ones he made during the 70s were the ones that were not that involved in political subjects. Of course, there have been films in Argentina during that period, but the amount of them and the items that could be surveyed or investigated were sort of not that wide during that period.
One of the things I admire about this film is some of the things, in fact, doesn't show. It's such an interesting script because there are a number of events that, by some standard, people will say, well, why don't we see the people who kill the father, or why don't we see at the end? But this film really concentrates on the effects that these incidents have.
Yeah, basically it does. The fact that her death is not shown at the end is more questionable, because that's told on a voiceover, and that's something that the public couldn't relate to much. I hope your audience did like it. I do like it personally, but it's something that has been questioned.
Well, now let me ask you a rather specific question about this. The implication at the end of the film is that that she was an historical character who the Argentine people have not remembered until today. Now, is this it's a simple question. Is this a real story that has been reworked into a script, or is she a representative fictional?
No, she's definitely is a representative fictional, and this it's related to this old story. Everybody asked me about the infiltration of Nazis in Argentina in that period, and there were a number of them, and this story reflects that, but it's not a true story.
Right.
Could have been, but it
Right.
was not.
No. Well,
The same way that the official story was not a true story, but could have been, and it was based in a number of stories that were very similar to the one depicted in the film.
Yeah. Well, the other thing that perhaps I don't understand enough, but one of the things I liked about the film was the way in which the conspiracy to take people in the country, it was clear that it was wide.
Oh, absolutely. With participation of the government.
With the participation
Absolutely.
of the government, we see a number of officials involved in it, and yet everything isn't laid out in the film. We simply know that it's happening. We know more than certain of the other characters know, because I mean we see somebody loading a gun or something of that sort. But there's a lingering sense to me in the film that the conspiracy is out there. This is being done, but even we don't know who all of these people are or whatever. So it stays with you.
Yeah, that's the way Aída Bortnik creates her characters in a very subtle way, and she doesn't tell everything. She leaves something for you to discover or to wonder about.
Right. Now, I'm just curious, since we have this screenwriter who's done both of these, does she work in other, does she write just screenplays, or does she?
Well, she wrote also the screenplay for Old Gringo, which is opening in these days, or just opened, I think.
Right.
With Gregory Peck and Jane Fonda, directed by the director of the official story. So they are still a team.
Okay.
And she also wrote the screenplay for the first Argentine movie that was a candidate for the Oscar, 1975, I think, called The Truce.
Okay.
That was her first screenplay. So she has been always around success and linked to awards.
Yeah.
And to very good movies.
Let's go. I'm just curious what the reception, we talked a little bit earlier about what the reception has been in the United States, or what our access has been to this. What has the reception in Argentina been of the new Argentine cinema? Is it a popular cinema within Argentina itself? Yes, no, I mean, certainly certain individual films may be popular, but this whole, is there a following for the cinema itself within Argentina?
Yes, I would say that there's been a great change in Argentina, because before this new film, Argentinian films were not really seen by the majority of the public. But now there's a big change, and probably because it's the own Argentinian people that are, in search of their own identity or catharsis of so many things that have happened in Argentina. And it's easier to get it out of your system if you see it out there. So I think that this is not only it's art, but it's also very good that something like this can happen, and it can be told in Argentina, and can be really experienced by the people, because they get to understand what has happened in their lives, and it might really help for the future. To understand.
This is something that has happened in a parallel way in other cultures, and it's a healthy thing in any particular culture, but certainly something we talked about several seasons ago on this show. This window of opportunity, as they say these days, that the Czech cinema had in the 60s, did the same sort of thing, and became enormously popular with its own people, because all of a sudden a set of issues, a whole kind of new cinema that was their own cinema, was up on the screen, and becomes this kind of working through. Because I think your use of the word catharsis is absolutely right. This sort of working through of things that were forbidden or too dangerous.
Too dangerous, or even unknown to many people that would sort of try to think that this was pure fiction. So those two levels that you can see on the film, on Poor Butterfly, are a reality in Argentina, also the people that didn't want to see what was going on and the people that were suffering that reality. So it gives a possibility to integrate, you know, all these two levels, and to see that was happening for everyone.
Right.
It wasn't just a group that was suffering this, it was a whole Argentinian society that had to go through this. So I think this new Argentinian film is you know, has really awakened a whole generation to a discovery of what we really are. It's
you know, it's of course interesting the way in which film can play this role, because it is such a public art. It's, I mean, the good news is when you're successful in film is that people fill a theater. You have a theater and people are experiencing this at the same time together. And I think that adds something to this sense of community about it, and makes it, as we said before, this sort of public working through of things, instead of the way in which privately one would have to do it.
Definitely. Yes.
Okay. Well, one other thing, just to clarify, is that different countries have different traditions of exhibiting films. It strikes me that these films are all made for exhibition in regular commercial cinemas. That is, the ambition of the people who make them is for this to stand side by side with whatever else is being offered from the world commercial cinema.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I say that just in contradistinction to certain film movements that have been very important, that were made, and they knew they would not be in a big cinema. They'd be in a cine club.
I know what you mean, but this is, well, this I think that what happened also in Argentina is like a universal problem. You know, it's happened in different places at different times, and it can happen anywhere.
Right.
So I think that that it's not a local problem. The stories might seem local, but the problems are universal. So in a way, it does have the possibility of entering an international market.
Right.
You know, so.
Yeah. Now that's certain different, I think, from some of the Argentine film of say the 60s.
Well, you have a good example in your own series with The Hour of the Furnaces. It was a film that was made not even to be shown in cineclubs, was made to be shown in basements, you know, at that time, because it was absolutely banned and forbidden. And now Solanas is doing movies that he wants to have in big cinemas and reach larger audiences, and I think that's a normal thing that happens.
Yeah.
You want to reach wider audiences with your movies because it's a big effort to produce them, and you want a lot of people to see them.
In your own country, around the world. No.
By the way, I think it's very valuable that you show this film. I don't think it was ever shown in American television. I don't know if I'm right.
And that's part of our point in making this series, is to make certain materials that perhaps has only been shown in museums or at a few universities more widely available. But let me ask you about about this film, but also about certain of the other films of the new Argentine cinema. This film fits in a very, I think, noble international tradition of filmmaking, what I think most of us would recognize as, or call the Costa Gavra style political thriller. I mean, a sophisticated politically, dealing with very traumatic moment in history, yet with this tension, this combination of the politically serious with even at times this kind of Hitchcockian sense of unease. We see that sort of thing. We've seen historical films like Miss Mary, I've mentioned before. What about this? I don't know how to say it. More, I hate to use the word experimental, but this slightly wackier.
We have a good example in Argentina. Unfortunately, or fortunately for some people, was not widely shown, which is Jorge Polaco, which is extremely experimental. We show some of his films at this show at the Museum of Modern Art, and he got also a lot of recognition in international festivals, but it belongs to that category that you just mentioned. It's extremely experimental. But he's trying also to reach larger audiences with his films.
Yeah, well, I think there is no such thing as a filmmaker who doesn't want
No.
a large audience.
If they claim that, they lie.
Right, exactly. I mean, why are all these crew members standing around if you want to reach an audience smaller than your crew? It's
Sure.
yeah, your crew. It's your crew itself. Well, but there is also an impulse to for co-production as well.
Well, we as producers, we know that there's a very limited market internationally for movies in Spanish, or for that case in any language, not being English.
Yeah, don't pick on Spanish, right?
Yeah, I don't want to pick on Spanish. North America, US and Canada are like 70% of the world market. So in order to recover costs, you have to have your movie shown here. The American audiences, unfortunately, they are not used to subtitles because America has produced his own material always. We are used to subtitles because we've seen your films since very young, and we are used to watch the film and the subtitles on bottom. But it's not something that the American audience are used to. And in that sense, I also appreciate your program in the sense that you're showing our movies with subtitles, and which is the only way we can show them, because once you dub them, they lose their character. So we have to surmount that too. So we are now co-producing, and we are trying to shoot in English. We just finished this movie, Ever Smile, which was shot in English in Argentina, which was a very controversial issue, as you can imagine.
Well, because who controls the language of a country? And
yeah, and of course it would be easier for us to express ourselves in our native language, but we must try to get as wider an audience as we can, and we have to recognize that the language of the movies is English, even though they are great movies that were not in English, but we have to try.
Okay, well, with that, we have to try to bring the show to a close, but with the promise, that there will be some more weeks of Latin American film in Spanish and in and in Portuguese. Well, if you'd like more information about Cinema Then, Cinema Now, the film series, or about cinema studies, graduate or undergraduate at the College of Staten Island, drop us a line. Drop it to Cinema Then, Cinema Now, the College of Staten Island, New York, 10301. Let me give you that information again, okay? Drop it to Cinema Then, Cinema Now, the College of Staten Island, New York, 10301. Well, Rolando, I want to thank you for bringing your expertise as a producer and one of the people involved with the new Argentine cinema in a number of ways. Liliana, for your perspective about general affairs, cultural affairs, Argentine, as well as your knowledge of the new Argentine cinema. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Well, I hope, as always, that our discussion here leads you to thought and discussion at home that you enjoy. Thanks for joining us.